President Trump's response to the Niger ambush has come under fire after he was accused of being insensitive in a phone call to the soldier's widow. Here's Major Garrett.
Maisha Johnson spoke for the first time since her husband came home about the call she received from President Trump.
The president said that he knew what he signed up for, but it hurts anyways. He couldn't remember my husband's name.
Mr. Trump said on Twitter the conversation was respectful and that he spoke Johnson's name from the beginning, without hesitation. Johnson's widow disagreed.
The only way he remembered my husband's name because he told me he had my husband report in front of him.
Mrs. Johnson is a constituent and friend of Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, a member of Congress since 2011 and before that the Florida legislature. Wilson listened to the president's call last week and accused him of insensitivity, prompting a barrage of White House criticism that persisted through the weekend. The president described her 3 times on Twitter as wacky. Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
More simply, as we say in the South, all hat, no cattle.
And Chief of Staff John Kelly piled on.
Even for someone that is that empty a barrel, we were stunned.
Again, Sergeant Johnson's widow disagreed.
What she said was 100% correct.
Mrs. Johnson was asked if she had anything to say to the president.
Nah, I don't have nothing to say to him.
Arizona Senator John McCain, a former prisoner of war in Vietnam, joined other Republicans in urging the president to end the dispute with the Johnson family.
We should not be fighting about a brave American who lost his life serving his country. That should not be the topic of discussion in America today.
In a different interview, McCain indirectly criticized the 5 Vietnam War deferments Mr. Trump received, the last in 1968 for bone spurs. McCain said during Vietnam, the poor were drafted in droves while the rich could buy their way out of combat with a concocted diagnosis. Tony?
Major, I want to linger for a moment on the president's dispute with the Gold Star family because it's not his first dispute with the Gold Star family. Is it that this kind of activity is a win for him with his base?
That's really hard to know, Tony, and I think it's much closer to the fact that there is a reflexive tendency of this president whenever he feels off-center, off-kilter, or surprised by a question or unprepared for a question to lash out and redirect attention, which is what happened, it seems like so long ago, just a week ago in the Rose Garden. When the president was asked about the raid in Niger, he wasn't asked about how he had conducted condolence offerings, whether by letter or by phone. He was just asked why he hadn't said anything about it. Well, the president clearly felt defensive about that, maybe defensive that the mission itself had gone so terribly wrong, and lashed out at his predecessors, suggesting that they didn't call as often as he did, or they had not offered condolences as frequently as he had. Then the White House had to find itself scrambling to write condolence letters. Then there was this whole controversy over how the president provided that level of condolence to the various families, certainly the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, and that continued to build all week. And the one thing I've learned about Donald Trump, even if a controversy continues to boil at a very hot level, as long as he feels he's defending himself and rallying those closest to him to defend him in the process, whatever the long-term result, he keeps fighting. And it's clear that that fighting tendency of the president will continue even in a matter like this, which, as his own chief of staff said, used to be considered sacred and above politics.
And I suppose we'll have to wait until 2020 to discover whether the president is fighting a winning fight or not here politically. On Tuesday, he is expected to meet with lawmakers on Capitol Hill to pitch a tax plan. Are we likely to see a united front on this, or will we see fracturing the way we did with health care?
Much more likely to see a united front for a couple of very simple reasons. Health care was always about asking Republicans to get into the specifics of altering a law passed by Democrats and written by a Democratic president. That meant taking benefits away from people and rewriting very complicated health care legislation. and dealing with some Republican governors who were not on board. All of that doesn't exist with tax cuts. Republicans are not only temperamentally inclined to cut taxes, they're ideologically inclined to cut taxes, and they appear willing, Tony, and this is an important part of this conversation, to believe that these tax cuts will generate enough economic growth to make sure that these don't create a huge deficit. There is very little, if any, historical proof to that, but Republicans want to do it. And there's one other thing I'd point out. Republicans in the White House are working in tandem at another level to get all of us in Washington talking about whether this is going to pass, holding back all the details about what's actually going to be in the tax bill until the last minute, making this a conversation about if it will happen, not what's in it. And we still have no idea, essentially, what this tax cut is going to look like, meaning who it's going to affect and by how much. And until those details are released, we're not going to have an idea of how the politics are really going to play out, except we know this. For now, Republicans are unified and are pressing the accelerator as hard as they can with a goal, House passage by Thanksgiving, on the president's desk by the end of the year.
All right, Major Garrett for us at the White House. Major, if you know what I should do with my 401k, let me know.
I'll let you know, Tony.
Thank you.